psychology, and I also have an interest in researching psychedelics as an alternative treatment for addiction. And without further ado, I'm excited to learn more about the use of logotherapy in the psychedelic space. So thank you. Thank all of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being here and for showing up. Hold on one second. Still got some more people joining. This is so wonderful. Woo! Yeah, so this event is going to dive into the therapeutic modality of logotherapy, making meaning of experiences, existentialism, and the psychology of death and dying, presented by Dr. Bethany or just Alex. Yeah, we mentioned that we wanted to use Alex, which is wonderful because that personalizes you and makes you, yeah, it's just who we are on the inside. That's absolutely what matters. And we will be learning how psychedelics in particular can be used to derive meaningful experiences from our very own research and professional development leader, Alex Seeloff. He is a PhD candidate from the University of Arizona, and he'll be sharing a lot about his own theoretical model. So it'll be a really awesome event for all of us to really join in this space and learn about these wonderful different topics that are will be very wonderfully paired together. So the breakdown of the event is going to consist of about an hour, and it will be, this little introduction here. It will then lead into about a 25-minute, talk about logotherapy from Alex. And then we are going to lead into about a 5-minute block of questions for, for that portion of the presentation regarding logotherapy. After that, we'll go into an introduction of Alex Seeloff, and we will talk about psychedelics and their role and how to derive that meaning in the psychedelic space. Then we'll also have about another 5 minutes for questions there. And then we'll end with a closing, and we'll be off on our night enjoying some beautiful newfound knowledge from our experts here tonight. So without further ado, let's begin. So I would like to read a bio from the Viktor Frankl Institute of Logotherapy about Alex. I came across this as I was researching for this event, and I came across Alex's bio, and it was just so wonderful to be able to listen and to hear about somebody who really dive deep into this field of logotherapy and making meaning. And so I'd like to share that with you all. So Alex holds the Viktor Frankl Chair for Philosophy and Psychology at the International Academy of Philosophy in the Principality of Liechtenstein, and is the director of the Research Institute of Theoretical Psychology and Personality Studies at Pazmany University. He has served as a visiting professor for existential psychotherapy at the Moscow University Institute of Psychoanalysis in Russia. He's the director of the Viktor Frankl Institute and the Viktor Frankl Archives in Vienna, and he is the first editor of the 14-volume edition of the collected works of Viktor Frankl. He has published over 15 books and articles, which has been translated into 11 languages. And he's currently lectures widely on philosophical and existential psychology, theory of cognitive science, and the psychology of death and dying. So with all of that stuff being said, Alex, you are more than welcome to take the floor. If you have your own slides that you want to share, I can stop sharing, and then you can talk, or you can just have a conversation with us. We're more than happy to be here.
Thank you very much for inviting me. That's the first thing I want to say.
Can you guys hear?
Can you hear me?
Okay, sorry, that's on my end. Yes.
Can you hear me? I do have some slides, but I do have a new computer because my old one broke down yesterday, and somehow I can't succeed in. Somehow the new computer doesn't like my slides, so you have to see my face, and I'm going to talk freely, and we'll see how it works out. And if you, by the way, this is an invitation, if not a plea. The topic is so huge, and it's enormously beautiful. That's why I'm in this field. But I'm not talking for me, I'm talking for you. So if I say something which you find especially interesting, I wholeheartedly invite you to just interrupt and say, hey, that's very nice. Would you like to say more about this? Yeah. So yes, it is a lecture. and yet I see so many faces, or at least I see many names. Please feel free to interact, because yeah, it's in the middle of the night, so you wouldn't give a university lecture in the middle of the night. So let's have it more like a coffee table conversation, and I'm going to talk a little more than the rest perhaps, but this is how it is. The second question is, can you hear me well? English is not my first language, and sometimes I will use very awkward pronunciations, but I hope you still get it. And if not, once again, please ask your questions. Yeah. And the third is a disclaimer. Christy, I wrote this to you. Psychedelics is not exactly on the map of my field. It was on the map of my life when I was a student. I, of course, like I think most students, read Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, being later Baba Ram Dass, and so on. So I know this from my pre-logotherapy days, if you want, if you want, yeah. And yet, as the field of death and dying was also mentioned, which is really my second thing I mainly research. Of course, one field I'm very much interested in, and we did a huge study with 650 patients actually, is the near-death experience. And there is a certain overlap, at least those near-death experiences who had both a near-death experience and before that experience with psychedelics say us it's not the same. The NDE to them seems to be more realistic. They really have the impression, but what is realism? But they have the impression to really encounter something. These are the overlaps. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to talk about logotherapy and try to connect nonetheless, and try to come as close to your field as possible. Yeah, without giving up mine. Yeah, but then the dialogue is possible. Now, logotherapy, and I think most of you maybe are not that familiar with the term logotherapy, but they might be familiar with the founder of it, Viktor Frankl, who was a Viennese psychiatrist, grew up in Vienna, was very interested in psychotherapy from a very, very young age. And it was about, I think, below 20 when he started to correspond with one of the most famous founder in the field, namely Sigmund Freud. Yeah, and he was now maybe that's a bit of a part of European history. Maybe you have to just imagine this was a young generation of Jewish boys and girls growing up, their parents being fairly conservative, and growing up in a huge monarchy. Austria, which is now a fairly small country, especially by American standards, used to be huge. Yeah, and with the decline of the monarchy, it shrunk into a very small country, which it is now. Yeah, and many of the givens of the earlier days fell away within one generation. Yeah, a generation which did not yet know what history had at stake, namely Hitler and the Nazi reign coming. Yeah, so, and these young people looked for alternatives. No longer was it Judaism or the faith, whatever the parents' faith was, but there were new doctrines coming up. Psychoanalysis being one of them, socialism being the other. Yeah, so the idea was that now it's time that we don't wait for something to happen, falling from heaven. Now the time is that we do something. Yeah, we ourselves have to do something. So Frankl was very much part of this movement. And by the way, he went to school in the very same school as Sigmund Freud, Alfred Adler, Henry Kissinger of all persons, Bruno Kreisky, who was Austrian Chancellor. So all these people in a couple of Nobel laureates, I forgot, all went to the same Sperl Gymnasium in Vienna, the second, which is still existent today. Yeah, and psychoanalysis was the beginning, and it was the beginning of trying to understand in the very young science of psychology what makes people tick. Why do we do what we do? Yeah. And the second question, of course, is when it comes to the mental health aspects, why does something go wrong? What in the biography of a person might have been problematic, or there were conflicts. So why why does it go wrong, so to speak? Yeah. And as I think many of you know, at least from the cinemas, whenever you go to a psychoanalyst, you, even without him or her asking, you start with your childhood. So the idea is that if we study the past of a person, we understand the present. Yeah. As if, and that's the unspoken or the implicit assumption of it, that we are, what we are today, is to a large degree the outcome, if not the necessary effect, of what happened to us in the past. Yeah, this is the first. And the second is that, and of course, many of you will know this, that Sigmund Freud was trying to find out what makes people tick. And he found a very simple answer, because it's something which makes people tick: libido. Yeah. And once again, Frankl bought into this for a long time. But sooner or later, I think rather sooner than later, discovered that somehow something is missing here. What, for example, what about other people? Huh? And this is when he moved on to Alfred Adler, who, I don't know, not if you know the name Alfred Adler, but most of you are psychologists. But anyway, so you know the name Alfred Adler. Adler was basically saying that all of us have a certain sense of inferiority. We are too big, too small, whatever. There's a deficit we think we have, yeah, and we try to overcompensate, or compensate or overcompensate this by getting esteem, self-esteem, and people recognize, acknowledge us, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So Frankl remained there for a while, and we talk now about a 20-year-old person. Yeah. And then through some of his teachers within the Adlerian movement, yeah, he came to the understanding still something is missing. Yeah. And what is it? So far, most of psychotherapy at these times was looking for an answer: what makes people happy? Yeah, how do I feel good? Yeah, what Frankl discovered was that maybe that's not the main question. Maybe the question is, what am I good for? Because if I know what I am good for, yeah, both my happiness has a certain quality, yeah, which is different than just having a fleeting mood of happiness, yeah, or all my needs are fulfilled, but there's more to it. And the second thing is that Charlotte Bühler, who was the founder of humanistic psychology, wrote a letter to Freud, and it was published. And in this letter, she wrote, why do we only study the biography of people who got mentally ill or who are depressed? Yeah, why don't we look at biographies of people who went through exactly the same problems, or even worse problems, or bad childhood, and what came out of it? A mature, a beautiful person, compassionate, because he or she knows what suffering is like. Yeah, when we are realists, existential realists, we have to accept that life is not only about happiness, it's also about compassion. It's also about being receptive to our own, or being vulnerable, our own suffering, the suffering of other people. Or what about mortality, for example? Yeah, I mean, the idea that we are here only to enjoy life sounds quite nice in the beginning, yeah, is a bit shallow in the end, and literally at the end, because when we talk to people who are at a deathbed, yeah, you observe something very interesting. None of them, and really zero, yeah, asks, did I get enough? You know, was my life fine? Was I loved? Did I have enough money? Did I have enough sex? Whatever, yeah. Were all my needs fulfilled? Did I receive enough? All of them are asking, what do I leave behind? And the interesting paradox in all of this is that to a certain, don't know why, don't ask why, but it is just an observation. That which we send out belongs to us, and that which what we receive belongs to somebody else. Now let me translate this. If someone is friendly to you and likes you and appreciates you, yeah, it's your joy of being appreciated, but it is their appreciation. If someone is very unfriendly and angry and unkind to you, it's their unkindness, not yours. Yeah, you see the point? So what we send out is what counts. Yeah, and this is basically, I mean, I could stop here, but there's much more to say anyway. But this is basically a very, very important message, which we also need sometimes to tell our patients. Patients, you know, people who come, or clients, and say, I feel I have not received enough love. I can't be kind, and so on. And then you just have to ask him, well, who says so? And sometimes they will come up with books, because there's so many popular psychology books telling you that you need to care only for you, think about yourself. How can I be happy? How can I be fulfilled? Yeah, forgetting that none of us, we are not islands. We are all connected. Not only we are, everything is somehow connected. Nature is, I mean, we are part of this. Yeah, it's not that there's the world and here we are connected. And now speaking psychedelic wise and from my Timothy Leary experience, I think some of you experience this firsthand, because this is one of the first things which pop up in your not in your mind but in your hearts when you try out certain substances. You see the connection, you feel the, you not only know it, but you feel it, you understand it. Yeah, and so maybe there's for example a bridge between the two fields. So so Charlotte Bühler was asking, how do people strive, mature, become even better persons, or not even better, but become themselves, yeah, because of what they endured, yeah. And this at the same time holds a great recipe for healing those whose life have been difficult. And this is not like telling them, you know, you can do different, but accepting our vulnerability, accepting that suffering is, and mortality and guilt, all of these not nice things, yeah, are part of a realist life, which also gives us dignity, which also enables us to relate to each other in a way which is perhaps not very contemporary. The contemporary zeitgeist is much more competitive, and you have to be happy and you have to do I don't know what, yeah. But we don't talk so much about what we have to be, but what we could be, and maybe not only what we could be, but what could be out there in the world, waiting for us, a task, yeah, waiting for us to be fulfilled and to be done. And this is called meaning, basically, yeah. So in contrast to the question, what makes us happy or what makes us fulfilled, our question is a bit different. It is, what am I good for? And let me explain this by a brief, how much time do I have? Do I have still a little bit?
Yes, you do. You're all set.
Okay.
Keep going.
Let me, well, I didn't even do 10%, but doesn't matter. I will tell you a brief story, but I think it illustrates much of this in a very nice way. Yeah. So imagine you are in Europe now, and there are two villages, as there are many villages, at least in Austria, and there's a path between them of, let's say, a few kilometers. Yeah, and an elderly lady, a farmer lady, a grandmother, goes there with a basket of very ripe pears, beautiful, delicious pears, yeah. And she walks there and she carries this, and she did it for decades for her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, but now it's heavy. And then a young boy comes along, yeah, and sees this lady and sees the pears and thinks, wow, these pears really look very, 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 very delicious, yeah. And I think I'd like to have some of these. But if I'm going to ask her, please give me some of these pears, she in all likelihood will say, yeah, but okay, why should I? No. So he thinks, I have a great idea. I will ask her, oh, can I take your heavy basket, because it looks very heavy on you. Can I take it and bring it to the village? Yeah, for him it's nothing. He's a young man full of power and vital forces. And lo and behold, he does it. And arriving at the village, the elderly lady says, thank you very much, young man. Would you like to have some of my pears, as you know, a sign of my gratitude? And he takes them, relishes them, they taste more delicious. And then she says, and then he himself can say, what can he say to himself? Well done, the deal worked out. No, I mean, for me, it was nothing. It was a business deal and it worked out. It is also possible, and now comes the question, not how do I feel good, but what am I good for, that the same young man, yeah, in another world, so to speak, but still in Austria, would say, would see the peers and would see the lady on the path between, and would think, well, it's very heavy for her, it's too heavy for her, and it's not heavy for me. So why don't do the needful, the meaningful? I will help her. He sees the peers, but he mainly sees the person, no? And then he carries the basket for her. And they arrive in the village and she gives him the pears and he relishes them, they're great. what can he say to himself? Good that I was there, because otherwise she would still be, you know, carrying, and it would ruin her day. She would be, you know, breathless and so on. And we can think even further. What if the farmer's lady didn't give out the pears? Just say, thank you very much, you're a beautiful young man, thank you, you're so kind, and that's it. The first one will no longer say, well done. Yeah, the first one will say, not well done, I was very stupid, I hoped the deal would work out, but it didn't work out. On the other hand, for the second man, for the second boy, good that I was there. Nobody and nothing can take that awareness away from him. Yeah, and this gift is, this is what we call meaning, and this is why what we do is a meaning-oriented psychotherapy, which is logotherapy. And I think I overstretched my time a little bit, but this is it for the moment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was wonderful. I love the visual about, you know, the pears, especially, and bringing it to a realistic scenario that we can all really easily and tangibly understand. So thank you so much for that. It was eloquently said. And I know a lot of you're getting a lot of claps and applause from the reactions on Zoom. So we really appreciate it. Yeah. And Ricky, you can totally facilitate that questions.
If anyone wants to ask any questions or type them out in the chat, we can go over the people that are raising their hands first, and the chats after anyone has any questions. So feel free to speak or raise your hand.
Hi, thank you so much for that amazing talk.
Thank you.
I'm thinking about like the switch between like from feeling like very depressed and like feeling like the world is against you and taking everything personally into that state of like finding meaning and like your purpose and like what am I for? Like I was wondering if you had any thoughts on like the switch of that itself. If that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. I only wonder whether it makes acoustic sense, because I'm not sure whether I heard you well. So can I repeat your questions, and you question and you tell me yes or no. So the question basically was, how do I do the switch of mindset of feeling vulnerable and everything is against us and you feel threatened, to, okay, so let's open the door and do something. Is that the question?
Yeah, because I feel like both ways, like they kind of reinforce each other in a cycle, so that it's very hard to make the switch from one to the other.
Right. Okay.
Personal vision. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
Thank you. Well, it's a very nice question. Number one, I would say there's no should and must, but only good at, so it's fine and it's also fine. And I know that people who are depressed don't like hearing this, but still, in a certain way, we can't choose very often anyway. And sometimes it gives us a certain depth, which then will equip us to help others who are really down. Yeah. So whatever happens on the human landscape, not everything, but most of it is, which is in the normal range, is okay, so to speak. Yeah. Unless it hurts other people, then forget it, then it's not okay. So now to your question, there's a very, very nice saying of Viktor Frankl, and it says, every fact we encounter in life is still incomplete. It waits for our input, it waits for our signature. And sometimes people say, yeah, but everything is, if you meet a wonderful, beautiful person, I mean, innerly and outwardly beautiful person, or a flower, or a tree, or an artwork, why should this be incomplete? Why? Because you still need to be receptive. You can also walk by as if it was nothing, or if this person was nothing. And then something is lacking, our appreciation, our gratitude, however we express it. Yeah. But very often facts are incomplete in the sense of that we are needed. And there's no magic trick for switching, but there's also a very nice saying by the existentialist Pope Søren Kierkegaard, who some of you might know. He's the founder of the movement, and he said the door to happiness opens outward. Like you have to put it, like, I don't know the English word, but you know, sometimes some doors you have to pull, others you have to push. This one you have to push. It's going out. Yeah. And I think the best recipe, if moods or feelings are in the way of pushing open the door, is don't fight against it. Whatever we fight against, we feed. You're feeding the appetite of anxiety, depression, and so on. Let it be there. Take it along with you. Take your depression and say, look, you and me, we're going out now and we're looking for incomplete facts. And believe me, you'll find many. Yeah. Either in your own area or, I mean, there's so much also suffering happening, not only flight hours away, but a few bus stations away. Yeah. Maybe not even that. Yeah. Maybe it's a neighbor flat. I don't know. So, and there's so much need out there. Yeah. This is a broken world. And we have a gift in us, which is enormous. It is hope, it is love, it is compassion. I mean, why do we have these things? Yeah. Because a broken world meets idealists. Realistic idea. I mean, we are realists. I know that we can't change everything. We can't feed every hungry child, but each one you feed makes a difference of life and death for this person. Yeah, and this is true, literally, but also metaphorically. Yeah. So there's so. I mean, don't fight against vulnerability or depression. Don't fight against it, but look for that which is currently the needful. Yeah. And very often also when people wonder now, what's the meaning of my life today or in my life today, sometimes maybe it's just what you have to do anyway, but the way how you do it. So if you've got children and if you cook lunch or dinner, you could do it like, microwave on and off. Yeah. So there's not so much love in it. Or you can say, look, we are feeding. I mean, this is not everyone has something to eat. This is a gift. And I mean, for times immemorial, humans gathered around the table or on the floor, wherever they met and shared when they had lunch or dinner. Yeah, it was the place to share what your struggles, your successes, and so on. So you see, I think it's not that you have to switch, the mindset, yeah, but the direction in which you look. Mm-hmm. And once again, if a depressed mood, if it's not clinical depression, but if there's a depressed mood coming or anxiety coming along, so be it. Like when I was a student, I used to be in Oxford for some time, yeah, and there was something called come as you are parties, and that meant that in the middle of the night, and you were already in your pajamas or your shorts, yeah, it was said, just right now as you are, don't dress, we have to party right now, bring wine but don't dress up, yeah, come as you are. And I think life is a bit like a come as you are party. For meaning, you don't have to be perfect, healthy, happy, beautiful, you just have to be yourself, and that's just fine enough. That the greatest gift you can give to existence is to be available as you are. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that very generous answer, Alex.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. That was really inspiring. And next up, we have Dean with his hand raised. And take it away.
Thanks, Richard. And Alex, yeah, that was really beautiful. And Robin for asking that question. My question is kind of subtly similar. In a therapeutic setting, if you find yourself working with a client or if you yourself are struggling to find meaning in the world or in your life, how would you start to work with that to help them find meaning?
Okay, thank you for the question. I should say that I'm mainly in research. I did psychotherapy training, but I'm writing, traveling, and so on. But so I can give you a very general answer. Logotherapists don't prescribe meaning. Yeah, that would be really strange. Yeah. Why? Because each of us, speaking of incomplete facts, each of us is irreplaceable. Yeah. So basically, I can sing my song and you can sing yours, and I can only write this poem, you can write. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So our signature in the world is like the fingerprint. Yeah. It's nobody in existential issues. Nobody can replace another person. Yeah, like in love, you can't just say, look, here's another looking like me. It's not the same. What counts is something which can't be measured so easily, but which I think we are all familiar. Whoever once loved a person knows that people are irreplaceable. Yeah. So, and the same goes for the relationship, not only between people, but also between us and the world and how we interact and how we fulfill meaning. Now, the process we are using is we are opening up. Number one is that we have to discover, we should discover, or we maybe remind people of the many, many, many possibilities or potential things they could do. And some of them are really meaningless. Yeah, some of them are really mean and bad and so on. Yeah, and then what you take is you take your patient and you walk around like in a museum of possibilities. Yeah, and say, look, this could be a reality if you turned it into a reality. So you say this word, you say to this. Can you imagine? You look a bit. Is it practical enough for you, Dean?
Oh yeah, I'm following.
All right. Okay. So you walk around and just let, there's another point I should make. When people wonder with which sensory equipment do we use to find meaning? Yeah, it's not only the head, like Spock in Enterprise, in Star Trek. Everything is very logical. No, and it's also not gut feelings. Like I feel like I have to whatever overeat or drink whatever or smoke. It's something in the middle of it. Yeah, between instinct and head, there's the heart, or what tradition calls our conscience. Yeah, which is uncorruptible. We truly believe that there's something like a compass, yeah, which points toward of these many possibilities. Yeah, some are more and some are less attractive. Yeah, some might be more attractive to the head, others might more attractive to the gut. But that's not the point. The innermost detection system, if you want, yeah, what I call conscience, or you might call heart, or call it atma, however you call it, yeah. But it is something which also almost every wisdom tradition talks about, yeah, which equips us to say, yes, something resonates. Yes, this possibility should become a reality. And if I don't realize it, it will never become a reality. Yeah, and that's the point. Yeah. So we really make a difference. We are co-creators. I mean, look around in the world. How much humans change the face of the earth. Some to the better, some to the worse. Yeah. And basically, we decide to be one among those who change it for the best of as many people as possible. Yeah. So the process in logotherapy is to look at the individual person, his or her context, so his world, yeah, his abilities and his possibilities, and also his responsibilities, yeah, and then with these three ingredients, plus the heart or the conscience, yeah, meaning unfolds, and it really does.
That's beautiful. I appreciate that. You broke it down to basically just like 3 simple steps. If you can do that, you can start to find what meaning looks like to you in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you.
That was awesome. And so the next question would be in the chat from Tate.
Richard, do you mind if I briefly interrupt before we move to the chat? Because I see Maria and I would like to thank you. Happy birthday to you. It's so unexpected to meet colleagues. I thought I would only meet those psychedelics. So happy birthday and all the best.
Can I say something in reply? Thank you, Alex. It's wonderful to see you, and it's a birthday present. So I really enjoy your presentation.
Thank you very much. Wow, thank you. It's nice to see you. Mm-hmm. Good. Sorry, Richard.
No, that was wonderful. No problem. And from Tate is, what is the primary protocol for practicing logotherapy, and how does it intersect with existential therapy?
Is this in the chat?
Yeah.
Why don't I see it? Anyway, yeah, there it is. What is the primary protocol for? Yeah, I mean, does it mean like what kind of training you have, or does it mean?
So you sort of answered the question by responding to Dean, but I am curious about how something like this overlaps with existential psychotherapy.
Right. I mean, it's a very, thank you, Tate, for the question. It's a very good question, and so far, logotherapy was perhaps the first existential psychotherapy. Yeah. And yet nowadays, as it is with first things, yeah, there are overlaps and differences between the large movement of existential psychotherapies and logotherapy. Logotherapy, to some extent, is a proud outsider and a proud insider. Yeah, the proud outsider bit is that we have a few ideas which I think to many of you will sound very old-fashioned. For example,